Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Season 4, Episode 5, Flight to the Finish. This is the episode in which our Cutie Mark Crusaders try to participate in being flag carriers for the Equestria Games, but unfortunately Scootaloo gets rather self-conscious about the fact that she can't fly, which leads to some drama, and then the episode ends with them winning. I've talked several times recently about how you can do something ground level and still have stakes. Stakes are great, right? Especially the good hollandaise. But this is a good example of that. The stakes here are the kids want to be the flag carriers. Like, there's a goal, they want to get it, blah, 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 right? And I just wanted to point this out because this is a topic that's been coming up a lot lately. In fact, one of the games we've been playing recently is Persona 5, a game which is very ground level, but managed to have decent level stakes, despite the fact that it's also small. You know, the big villain being the local high school's PE teacher doesn't seem like a big deal, but there's still very serious stakes involved because of how specifically he is involved with the lives of several individual people, including how disgustingly horrible of a human being he is, among other things. So, I think this episode is a good example of what I was talking about therewith. This episode also introduces the fourth and I believe final major plot thread of Season 4. I say major plot thread, I shouldn't actually say that. In fact, it's more like a recurring plot thread. This probably is closer to a subplot, but that would be the subplot of the Equestria Games, which several other episodes will also cover and be mentioning in the background until they finally actually happen later on in the season. And we'll actually see this same performance in the Equestria Games itself. By the way, for those keeping track, it's Discord's arc, the Equestria Games, the chest, and the journal. Those are the four major arcs of this one. So, first and foremost, I'm going to go ahead and give a continuity counter up. Where's the counters? There they are. For Miss Harshwini and the Equestria Games itself, since, you know, they did win that, so that's a thing. The castle doesn't even exist yet, so I suppose that answers your question, Silvercom. I like the additional animation on Miss Harshwini. That's a weird way to say that. It's a weird sentence there. But she has extra frames of animation to emphasize how she's talking, which was a good thing. And we also have... There's a nice little thing that the episode shows very, very quickly, and once again helps demonstrate a lesson. And it's... I hate to point out something so minor, but it's the kind of thing that I think needs to be reinforced in little ways. There's this bit where Diamond Tiara says, "Maybe it must be me." And then, you know, another one says, "Maybe it's me." And then Scootaloo says, "Maybe it's us." And that's the distinction. The fact that that's so quietly but automatically presented as, you know, the us being a better thing than the me thing. You notice Diamond Tiara, as is shown later in the episode, isn't even doing her run, her gag, her play, her performance, routine. There we go. She's not even doing a routine by herself. She's doing it with Silver Spoon, and yet she's still focused on herself. Whereas the Cutie Mark Crusaders are more... You get the idea. It's just a really little thing, but it's a good way to emphasize it. The two boys also said us. That's it. Anyway, so Miss Harshwini... Yes, Snips and Spales did also say us. That then cuts to... So we see Miss Harshwini in direct and obvious contrast with Rainbow Dash. Even musically, they still use the music cues thing. Also, this is a weird thing to point out, but this is the first time I've noticed this. I don't know if this is always true, but the floor of the classroom is dirt speckled with hay. You know, the kind of thing that you would have inside of a place that holds horses. I can't think of the name right now. I'm sorry, I'm fighting off a really bad headache, and I'm running on low sleep right now. Please forgive me. So my brain's just kind of here. Stable, thank you. It's the kind of thing you'd see on the floor of a stable. I don't know if I've just never noticed that before, but it jumped out at me immediately because there's several shots looking down at the ground. It was like, huh. Wouldn't that be uncomfortable? Anyways, I wonder what that smells like. Ew. I like how Miss Harshwini is yawning. Oh my god. I like how she's showcased as someone who is professional, but she doesn't she's not uncaring, right? She's not bored. She's not doing this because it's her job and fine. I guess I'll go ahead and tell the fillies about their duty. You know, they could have done that route. They didn't. Instead, she's just very prim and proper. Don't worry, you have to wow me, but don't worry, I imagined you will, and blah, blah. Yeah, so I like that. I like that. It's a good way to portray her. Because she could have come across as snobby otherwise, but she doesn't. It's good. Then we come to something, and I believe this is the first time, so this kind of ties into what several people in chat have already said. I believe this is the first time they flat out say, what is special about Ponyville? Flat out in-universe acknowledgement, it's the combination of the 3 types of ponies. Now, someone mentioned that this, wonder if this was a social experiment. I actually do legitimately wonder if that's true. Now, obviously, there are other places where multiple type of ponies exist, but from everything we've seen, Ponyville is itself unique in the fact that it is an average melting pot of the 3 types. Yes, Ponyville also has a flag, too, which is more to your city-states idea, Weouds. That, because considering Celestia pretty much specifically sent the Apple family here to help establish it, and connected people there. And yeah, it also physically is in between Cloudsdale, or actually, excuse me, Cloudsdale and Canterlot, the Pegasus and the Unicorn spot. Yeah, it wouldn't actually surprise me at all if this was something that was being pushed. I don't think there's any in-universe confirmation of that, but I think there's a lot of evidence that showcases that. It also seems to be a successful experiment, which kind of goes to the pattern concept I've talked about several times before as well. So they say, what makes it? It's the fact that we're here. No, this is probably more the Greco era. So then they do the song, we're strong as horses, which is a decent song. I've put it in the song list where I feel like it lists. And yeah, sorry, Manhattan is also predominantly, which is actually to the south, so it literally is the triad with Ponyville in the middle. I don't know if that's on purpose, but there it is. Anyways, the song happens, and it's a good song, but the reason I want to point out the song is this is probably the best showcasing of the new, I don't know what else to call it, lighting and shading engine they've been using since Season 4 started. I've pointed it out a few times, but you can really tell that they've stepped up the way they're using shadows and the way they're using lighting in that song in order to add more of a 3-dimensional feel to a lot of the scenes. It's good stuff. I like it. I just wanted to comment on it briefly. So what then happens is actually kind of an awesome scene. You 3 will never be able to do it because you have blank flanks. And their response is, that's it? What does that have to do with anything? Because that's exactly what the response should be. In fact, I actually noticed this time, I never noticed this before, Sweetie Belle literally rolls her eyes, like, it's a brief shot, but in the background she's just like, really? Uh-huh, yeah, we're blank flanks. And yeah, it's Raskor. They're like, we already called them blank flanks, what else can we do? This goes back to something I've talked about many, many times about bullying. Whoever writes this show, I swear to God, they really do know a lot about bullying and how it's approached and how it's defended against in both sides of the equation. And it's one of the things I like better about most of the Cutie Mark episodes, is they really shine a light onto it and why it's bad, and also powerless at the exact same time. Because you'll notice that despite calling them cutie flanks, the answer is nothing. It doesn't work. It shouldn't work. And anyone who's actually thinking about it would be like, yeah, and? What does us having blank flanks have to do with anything? Because it doesn't. They're just saying that to hurt them. I've talked about this so many times, and I'm going to say it again because it bears repeating. Bullies like that, whether you're a kid or an adult, if they come to you and say, oh, you suck, and here's why. But what they do, there's a specific slice, because sometimes someone gives you actual criticism. And then sometimes someone says something because they're trying to hurt you. And that's such an important distinction, because of the fact that all they're trying to do is hurt you, What they say doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's already a sore spot. It doesn't matter if it's something that you yourself are vulnerable to or you yourself have had bad thoughts about. It's all you have to acknowledge is that they are trying to hurt you, which means they're not saying that from a position of legitimacy. Therefore, it's just noise. Therefore, roll eyes, right? Which is exactly what they do. The catch there... the catch... Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's partially true. It usually will be partially true. That's any bully or troll worth their salt will aim for something they think you are vulnerable at because they want to hurt you. That's their goal. Now, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but this is why they go after Scootaloo's wings and her inability to fly. This shows two things very quickly and efficiently. First of all, actually three things, excuse me. First, it shows they're kind of over being blank flanks. It's not a source of shame for them. Oh, sure, they'll get their cutie marks at some point. But it's not like, it's not like, oh, God, I don't have my cutie mark. What's wrong with me? They're past that at this point. Now it's more like, at some point I'll get my cutie mark and it'll be awesome. Second thing is it showcases the nature of bullying and escalation. Bullying escalation is something I have been on the receiving end of many times because most of the bullies I encountered back in school would run into this very quickly with me. And then they would escalate, and then they would escalate, and then they would escalate, and then I'd punch them, and then they'd stop. Now, I'm not actually saying that with a dose of pride, but that was my approach. They escalated until they finally hit something that I was no longer, I was like, okay, this is officially enough. And then I would hit them as hard as I could, and I have a hell of a punch. And then they'd stop, because they would recognize that I wasn't someone, they could keep bullying. Now, because I changed schools every 6 months or so, that was kind of necessary. I'm not advocating that other kids do that. But this is the exact format that escalation would take. Okay, that didn't work. So now we gotta pay attention. Let's see, what could we do in order to hit them? Let's try something else. So they try something else. And they can always tell when they've hit a sore spot, which you'll notice they do. Because the way Scootaloo reacts shows the total opposite of the earlier point. They've gotten over being blank flakes, but Scootaloo does have internal insecurities about her wings and about how stunted they are. And it is something that bothers her. And so when they say something, it hurts her. Now, it shouldn't. Not just for the obvious reasons, but because of the fact that what they're saying is irrelevant. Remember what I said earlier. Even if it's partially true, it doesn't matter. Because they're not saying that from a point of legitimacy. They're just trying to hurt you. Doesn't matter if your wings are actually stunted. What matters is that they don't give a damn about that. Make sense? Now, obviously Scootaloo hasn't quite learned this lesson yet. It took me a while to learn it too. I think it was like 7th, 8th grade when it finally kicked into my head. And, it is Savicum. I know. I'm not being insulting here. It's just... The real point, though, and this is the biggest point of all, is that Scootaloo really is insecure about her wings. Because she is a form of disabled. Yeah, oh yeah, also, by the way, Diamond Tiara just made fun of someone who's handicapped. Let's just tack that on there. Now, I do have to say really quick that I actually kind of like how this episode handles the handicapped thing. Because it's not overstated and it's not understated. It's there, and it bothers her, and that's the plot point. The fact that it is a thing for Scootaloo, the fact that Scootaloo is bothered by that, that's the point that is actually being emphasized and stressed, not whether or not she's actually worth a damn or isn't worth a damn, although we'll get to that later, of course. You'll also notice that everyone was really wowed by their initial presentation, which they just threw together, probably because they actually, have gotten a little bit better thing. Yeah, that was me. Your use speech was awesome. It really was. You do not have to be me to be great. You don't have to be like others to be great. You just have to be you and figure out what you're great at. I have a private suspicion / theory that most people are great at least something. Yes, I did act. That must have taken forever. I don't actually have a lot of proof of that, admittedly, other than my own real-life experience, but I know how small of a sample size that is. But I firmly believe that everyone is great at least something. And that's an important lesson to take away, I think. But I don't want to get on that. Let's move on. Let's move on. So, get under the skin, bother Scootaloo. Oh, yeah. So we've been playing Persona 5 lately. And you're probably thinking, Lord, why are you bringing that up? Well, in Persona 5, what happens is, one of the main precepts of the game is that people have certain worries or fears or even good emotions, thoughts about trying to protect someone. And the big point is that those get distorted. And the point of the main characters is that the main characters go in and try to fix those distortions so they can revert back to the original emotion and be better people. Yes, there's some brainwashing involved. Let's just skip over that for the moment. But the important part is the distortion part. Now, one of the reasons I'm with that in Persona 5 is because that's how real life works. It is demonstrably proven that it is extremely easy for an emotion, whether good or neutral, to be distorted into something much worse than itself. The most obvious and common example would be love twisting into jealousy, for example. Scootaloo... Yeah, no kidding, I say 2K. Scootaloo in this episode shows this. She is self-conscious, she has low self-esteem, and that twists and distorts into a form of self-centeredness and selfishness. And you can see how it twists that way. I'm worthless becomes I'm great. I'm the focus point, because that way I won't be so worthless. Like, you can see, this is why it's called a distortion, because you can still see the original image in the twisted one. Right? You can still see where it came from. It's not like she goes from being, low self-consciousness to suddenly being really into apples or whatever. That's a bad example, but yeah, I have to fly, otherwise the bullies are right. You can see how it gets twisted from the original emotion into the new emotion, and she showcases this throughout most of the episode. And it's kind of heartbreaking to watch, because I've seen this happen in real life many times, including in me. So then they show the new routine, and it's crap. But it's funny, because one of the biggest reasons the new routine is crap is because they're also exhausted from practicing the new routine. So, woo. And Rainbow's like, just go back to the original thing. The original thing was fine. It's cool. Left, sorry. And then I do this, and then I bump. Clonk. Yeah, Rainbow this whole time, it actually irritates me just a little bit that Harsh, when he told her to tone it down, because if she hadn't, this might not have happened. Proper support from adults is another and extremely invaluable tool in fighting bullying. And I would like to think that despite Scootaloo's insecurity, which we already established is a thing, I would think that she would have, at the very least, another tool in her arsenal to defend against that insecurity attack from the bullies if Rainbow had properly supported her. If she had actually shown her the enthusiasm and shown her that was amazing. Bravo, you're doing great. Do it to it. Yeah, the fact that Rainbow Dash is the voice of reason is fascinating, although it makes sense in its own right, but I'll get to that in a second. I guess I can talk about it now. Rainbow Dash, as we've already talked about, and has come up more than once before, has actually pretty low self-esteem too. I like to describe her self-esteem as having 1 HP. Anything that breaks that 1 health point, and she's just, I'm worthless. We've seen this before multiple times, and it will come up in the future. So it makes perfect sense to me that Rainbow Dash would be the kind of person to try and support Scootaloo in a situation in which she is self-conscious and insecure. Similarly, Rainbow Dash's big thing is loyalty, and her big thing is trying to keep the team together here, and pushing the others into supporting each other. And there's this great scene at the train station where Scootaloo says, I didn't write down the exact quote, but I'm going to bow out because I don't contribute enough. I'll just wear you guys down. that hurt a bit, you know. That hit a specific weak spot for me there. The I'm so worthless, I shouldn't even be part of the group thing is something I've actually done multiple times in my life. So, that leads to Rainbow Dash coming back and being like, look! And then they yell at each other because they're kids. Yeah, no. While Scootaloo's just like, okay. Quick bit here, though, really. I'm going to get real for a second, if that's okay with you guys. I'm sorry, I'm actually tearing up just a little bit because this is because I'm tired, so my defenses are down. But also because this is something I believe very strongly in. I want you to imagine for a moment that you feel you are worthless, that you can't contribute enough, that you're not good enough, that you are just so worse in every way, in every aspect, than the other people in your team, or your family, or your friends, or company, or whatever, okay? And now I want you to take that thought and throw it out the goddamn window. Because it doesn't matter. One of the things I really love about this episode is that Rainbow Dash says, why does it freaking matter that you can't fly? You're you. You matter. Not what you can do. Not what you can contribute. Not how much of the rope you're pulling. Not how much of the ditches you're digging. Not how much income you're bringing into the family. I mean, those things can and do matter. I'm not trying to say that they don't. Your worth as a human being is not varied because of your usefulness. And this episode does a very good job of showcasing that in a very brief manner, admittedly. But the point is hammered in because they say, what is the thing that makes Ponyville so good? Is it the fact that we have people here who can fly? Or the fact that we have magic? No, it's because of the fact that it's where people get together and combine and coordinate and cooperate. It is, they say friendship, but I almost feel like that's deleterious to the overall point. Because the point is that it's where people have each other's backs regardless. Where the fact that you are someone who is injured or disabled or poor or weak or young or old or tired doesn't matter, because you're there and you're part of a group that actually gives a damn. I speak a lot against tribalism, but that's because, in my opinion, tribalism is itself a distortion of the point that really works, and that's togetherness. Friendship, if you want to call it that. People actually unifying because of their differences, in spite of their differences, because they actually legitimately care about each other. Not because they get something out of it. Not because they have to. Not because it's mandated. But because Scootaloo's an awesome person, end statement. And yeah, I agree with SA2K. Rainbow Dash, her idol, coming down to her and saying, you are a special person, has got to mean the world to Scootaloo. Someone who, as we've seen, and will continue to see, doesn't really have a lot of parental figurehood in general in her life. Rainbow Dash is effectively her big sister, and functionally her only family on camera. So then we have a reprise of Hearts as Strong as Horses. We even have a callback, high-fiving Granny Smith as they go by. That's fair, Lord Harrimont. You're right, I actually agree. Rainbow Dash, Sweetie Belle, and Apple Bloom are her family. I agree with that completely. And I suppose you could argue there's some extended family going on as a result of the people connected to them. So, Anyways. So, of course, Ms. Harshwinny is super into it, you know. They win. Yay! We never get to see what Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon's routine was. Oh, we see their outfits, so it's probably something really stupid. It's professionalism, Ms. Harshwinny. Oh yeah, actually, I wanted to point out one other thing. So Rainbow Dash shows up, and there's a really brief moment, and it's actually good. It's good animation, technically. Normally, I'd call this good acting, because usually it'd be an actor acting with their face. What happens is her eyes light up for less than a second when she sees the other two, when she sees Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle, and then immediately it's back to, I don't want to see them. Now, obvious, but still good. It's the kind of thing that needs to be showcased and is pretty well presented. Now, this is a good episode. Let me go. This is actually our very first Ed Valentine episode. I already have it up here on the spreadsheet. But I gotta point out, before we rate this episode, I gotta say, the episode ends on 2 wah-wahs and a fake out. Did you catch that? So first it's professionalism, and then the camera zooms in on Scootaloo's flank, and then they fake out. No, we're totally gonna get a thing, and then ha ha ha. So I'm actually giving this 2 wah-wahs because they literally do them back to back there. Sorry. So yeah, if this qualifies as a red or a purple, I think I'm going to put this as a red. My requirements for a purple are pretty high. That's why it's purple. But this is a good damn episode, and this is a very good entry for Mr. Valentine. I don't know anything about him whatsoever, but color me impressed. Oh yeah, what was I meant to share something, by the way. Real quick, before I answer the purple question. If you remember, I gave episode 4, Daring Don't, a yellow. But after I cut off the recording, and while I was going grocery shopping, I was reanalyzing the episode in my head, as I am wont to do. And I decided to push it down to a green, below average, because Daring Don't did have some good elements to it, but ultimately the structure of it and the presentation was really bad, and there were some really big flaws with it, and so yeah, no, that's below average, I'm sorry. So we shoved that one down to green. We have a few purples so far. We have The Return of Harmony, that's the first Discord episode. We have Lunar Eclipsed, which is the first Luna episode. We have Magical Mystery Cure, which I wasn't expecting to be a purple, but that one was actually really, really, really good. That was the Season 3 ender. And Hurricane Fluttershy, which is probably one of the most emotionally impacting episodes I've seen so far, up to the point where we're at right now. So, those are the purples so far. We actually have a decent number of reds. What I kind of want to do someday, and I'll never have time for, is I kind of want to go through like other shows I know pretty well, you know, like TNG or whatever, and do this same system and just kind of line it up. It would be fascinating to compare that way. I'm one of those people who likes, what do you call it? Quantifying, I guess, is the word I want here. I'm one of those people who likes to quantify. I like data. No, not top 10 list. No. I like having something other than vague impressions, basically. It's one of the reasons I like, actually going through and reviewing the games in the manner that we do. And, sitting, okay. And that's one of the reasons why it's been so fascinating, for example, going back through Star Trek and reanalyzing my opinions, because several times when I go through, trying to actually analyze the episode, sometimes my opinion changes substantially because, I'm really thinking about it. So I really enjoy quantifying, is the point there. I like having something and saying that, and I can point to a figure. Lesson 0, let me just do a search, because I don't know who wrote that one. There it is, Megan McCarthy. Lesson 0 is a red. Oh, anywho. With that, we'll chop off the local recording.